Mm. So for me Mondays, it just so happens that I record these on Fridays, which means I get to drink. Tonight, I went up to my local liquor store and just grabbed the first bottle of Pinot Grigio, which is my favorite white wine, out of the cooler. So this happens to be from the Cabot collection, which is an Italian Pinot Grigio, one of the best-selling Pinots in the U.S. according to their webpage. Of course, they're all going to say that. But the principal source for the grapes for this wine comes from three areas in Italy: Trentino, Friuli, and Veneto. Alcohol content in this is 12.1%. Woo! Party! So let's try it a little bit, shall we? Is that a wonderful sound? Now, I'm not sure how many of you guys may have gone to some wine tastings or things like that, but it's an interesting and fun time usually. Oftentimes your local wine shops will have tastings and will bring in instructors and teach you how to taste and things like that, and it's fun. One of the things that they hand out are the wine tasting color wheels, like you see here. They use this, you know, when you hear the fun language that people who are wine with a little bit of nuttiness. I know for this particular wine, the vendor, you know, has their own description of what it tastes like, and somebody can tell you what it tastes like, but take your taste buds and slap the wine on there themselves and then tell them what it tastes like to you. So wine is a very personal thing, and it tastes different to everybody. You have to have a good nose. For me, this, I smell a woodsy kind of a scent with this. Yeah, I'm sensing a woody, not physically, maybe. Yeah, and so along with the woody, I mean, it's oaky to me. It's oaky, but there's also some fruitiness in there. It's got some sweetness to it as well. Let's go ahead and give it a taste. Oh wow, shocking. I was expecting a little more sweeter than that. But to me, I got a kind of a sulfury taste. Yeah, so woody smell, sulfury taste, and that sulfur's not a bad taste. It's you know, it is what it is. It's my taste. Yeah, so the vendor was saying fruity. I'm tasting. Yeah. Yeah, chemically, sulfury, not a bad flavor, but definitely not what the advertisement led me to believe. All right, so yeah, so that's our wine tasting for the night. So yeah, it's not bad. It's drinkable. I don't have any snacks to pair it with at the moment. The company suggests feta cheese, pine nuts, as far as meat, chicken or turkey. Yeah, I don't think this is just a sitting and sipping wine. This is definitely something that needs to go with some kind of food. Yeah, so it's also saying goes well with citrus, green apples, and asparagus, and some desserts. I would not think this would be a good dessert wine. Myself, I do think it would be good with chicken or turkey and you know, some green vegetables that are bitter themselves, maybe some Brussels sprouts or something like that to offset it. I think it might adjust the taste a little bit with that. So all in all, it's good, and I'll be drinking it and probably will be drunk by the end of this video. So, on to our next topic tonight. Being that it's Monday, it's me Monday, and what that means is I'm talking about myself, and that's okay. One of the things I'm talking about are my vitals as I work towards my goal of improving my health. Today I spent about 30 minutes on my little elliptical, not at one time. I spent in two 15-minute bursts, which was good though. It felt really good, and I felt good afterwards. Very nice and got a good lather up, so it was good stuff. I weighed myself right before the video, down to 271.5. So I see progress, and this is kind of how I go when I go to lose weight. I'll lose it in big chunks, and then I'll plateau for a while. So I have to keep the regimen going in order to keep those plateaus and reaching the next drop-off point. So I'll lose a bunch, plateau for a while, lose a bunch. So also when I typically start something like this, I lose a bunch early on and then plateau for a while. So, you know, I know I'm smart enough from my own experience with myself to know how that's gonna, you know, how this is gonna behave. So all this comes with age, right, fellas and ladies? So, more about me, and this is going to be directed a lot at my children. Most of you may not care about this. For what it's worth, I find this topic, no matter who's involved, it's fascinating. It's about genomics, and you know, if you're going to talk about who you are, you should probably talk about where you came from. And you really can't explain where you came from unless you know at a genomic level where you came from. And so a few years ago I participated in the National Geographic genographic program, where you actually do a swab of your cheek cells and send it in, and they do an analysis and send you the results back. It was fascinating. So we're going to start there with where I came from, and you know, hope it's interesting for you. So what you'll see as we progress through this is a map chart that shows the ways in which my ancestors migrated from the earliest points through around, you know, about maybe 10,000 years ago or so. But that's a lot of information, and again, very interesting stuff. Now the way they come up with this is they study a person's genes, and they're looking for markers. They're looking for mutations, and they know when these mutations happened. And what they do is they look at your genome, and when they see these mutations, they can place you as part of this family group. And so basically the way they describe how you came to be where you are is through a series of migration patterns based on individuals who had a certain mutation, and then what happened to their descendants afterwards. More wine, please. Yes, thank you. Funny thing about wine is the more you drink it, the better it tastes. Alrighty, now that our whistles are wetted, we can proceed with my genetic timeline. So as you'll see here in the slide, and you may see me read a little bit from here, there's a lot of information to share. But in this first genomic mutation, it occurred in the P305 marker more than 100,000 years ago. This signifies the common direct paternal ancestors of every male on the planet. Now, when I did this test, I just want to point out, I did the paternal test. You had the option of doing maternal or paternal. Now, the things they do now combines them. So back then I had a choice, and I did my paternal testing. So as we're going through this, it's designating a male mutation lineage. Around 100,000 years ago, the P305 mutation occurred in a man in Africa. And again, it's one of the oldest mutations that is shared by all men. It therefore marks one of the earliest splits in the Y chromosome tree, and marks itself as one of the earliest branching points in human evolution. Sippy, sippy. Shout out to Bunny. The next branch we have in the tree is the M42 branch. This branch occurred about 80,000 years ago in East Africa. This is also a common ancestor of most men living today. Some of this man's descendants were the first ones to venture out of Africa into the Middle East and to Southern Asia. The third branch we have is the M168 branch. This occurred about 70,000 years ago in East Africa. The M168 branch was one of the first branches to leave the African homeland. And the man who gave the first marker to my genetic lineage probably lived in Northeast Africa, in the region of the Rift Valley, probably in the regions of Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania. In addition to a favorable climate in this era, there was also a great leap forward in modern humans' intellectual capacity. Many scientists believe that at this time the development of language gave us a huge advantage of other early human-like species. With improved tools and weapons and the ability to plan ahead and cooperate, work together, we were able to begin using resources and tools and things like that to really the modern humans we know today. The next branch we have is the P143 branch. It occurred about 60,000 years ago in Southwest Asia. This mutation is thought to be one of the first occurring outside of Africa and is thought to be a pivotal humans. Moving along the coastline, members of this lineage were some of the early settlers of Asia, Southern Asia, and Australia. The next branch is the M89 branch. This is around 55,000 years ago in Southwest Asia. This marker is found in 90 to 95% of all non-Africans and was probably mutated in a man around 55,000 years ago in the Middle East. While many of the descendants remained in the Middle East, others continued to follow the great herds of wild game through what is now Iran, and then north into the Caucasus and into the steppes of Central Asia. The next branch we see is the M578 branch in Southwest Asia about 50,000 years ago. After settling in Southwest Asia for many millennia, humans began to expand and migrate in various directions, including east and south around the Indian Ocean, but also north towards the Black and Caspian Seas. The first man to acquire mutation 578 was among those who stayed in Southwest Asia for quite some time before moving on. Cheers. The next marker is the P128 marker from around 45,000 years ago in South Asia. This marker is found in about half of all non-Africans today. This man was born about 45,000 years ago and was one of probably the second wave of migrations that moved east from Southwest Asia. Our next marker is the M526 marker. It originated around 42,000 years ago in Southwest Asia. And like the previous marker, this man was one of the second wave of migrations that settled around South and Southwest Asia. Branch M45, about 35,000 years ago, appeared in South and Central Asia. The paternal ancestor who had this marker traveled to the savannas of Central Asia with large groups of nomadic hunter-gatherers in the Paleolithic era. These big game hunters were parents to two of the most widespread lineages in modern populations, and one that is responsible for many of the persons in the early pre-Columbian Americas, and one that spread furthest north and west into Asia and produced the highest frequency lineages among the Europeans. The M207 marker appeared about 30,000 years ago in Central Asia. This person's descendants would go on to settle in Europe, South Asia, and the Middle East, and his descendants include two major lineages that accounts for most men in Western Europe and a large number in Asia as well. In our final branch, which is covering around 17 to 22,000 years ago, the location of origin actually approaches the time where we had the Great Ice Age back in the day. You remember that? So when the Earth entered its cooling phase, most people from this line sought refuge in southeastern Europe, around northern Spain, Catalonia. Once the ice began to recede, though, this is when there was a huge expansion and migration from these climate refuges And this is where we see the huge branching out of people. This is where you see my line going into southern England. And through these migrations and the population boom experienced in this Neolithic period, this lineage and its descendants went on to dominate most of Europe. Well, that's pretty much it for my genetic line. But there's a couple of things that I take from this that I find very profound. One of which is I'm an African. I'm also an Asian. I'm also from the Middle East. And the most important thing I take from this is the fact that I share the same genomes with 99.9% of the males on this planet. And if that doesn't mean that every single one of you are not my brothers, I don't know what it means. But in my opinion, it is. I don't care what you look like, what you do for a living, your orientation. Every one of you is related to me, and I will treat you like my family if I ever run across you. I think I'm getting sappy now because I've been drinking. The wine is getting much better. I'm going to let you go for tonight, but I do appreciate you joining me. If you want to get notified when I post these things, you can always subscribe. If you like what you see, right? Yeah, I know you do. If you like what you see, go ahead and like the video, and please comment and share your thoughts with me about where your history is from. If you've done one of these studies, let me know. I think it's fascinating science, and it's amazing with some of the stuff that we're able to accomplish today with what we've learned. All right, guys, thanks and good night.